did pretty okay. That's where I got a lot of my discipline from, was doing time, being in there. A lot of the places, since the first charge that I had was what it was, it made me a high security level. So when I would get locked up, I'd go to like LA County Supermax at Wayside, which was
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
I didn't bail out. I was in there, so I was fighting it for like 3 or 4 months. And at that point in time, they were like, "Oh, if you just take this, you can get out now." And so I was like, "Okay," I took it. Made me a felon. Worst mistake I ever made.
So now you got that stamp on you.
Got the stamp. Got out, did the 52-week anger management thing, getting ready to complete probation. And at that point in time, I was just about 30 years old and had the wonderful idea of the neighborhood I was in. There was a couple of guys and decided to smoke meth.
Ooh.
And
at 30 years old, you decide to take up meth. Okay.
Yeah, there was problems. Me and my brother weren't getting along. We had been button heads. His girlfriend at the time really caused a lot of problems between us. Things were just not going very good for me. My father was just looking to remarry with somebody, and I was just pretty much on my own there in Los Angeles, and it was just this group of guys. And I was like, "Oh, I'll just do this. It's not a big deal. I'll just do this time. It's not, that's not a big deal." And then it just hit me. And then it was the next day I was there. The next day I was there, and that's really when it started to go downhill.
Meth is one of those drugs that, if you ever look up those faces of meth online,
man.
just it destroys people. It makes them into walking zombies, like living zombies. It's one of those drugs that people, from what I heard, I don't have any experience with meth, but it's like one time, and that's what it sounds like. One time, and this is where you've been all my life.
Yeah, it was. So it just was off and running. Started. But I still, was working. I was actually working for an HVAC company at that point in time. Was friends. My father's friend owned the company, and they could just tell something was up. And they were like, "Hey, you need to go get help, or you don't have a job." And I was like, "Well, what? I haven't missed work. I've never been late. Like, what are you talking about?" They were like, "Yeah, that's the ultimatum." And I said, "Well, I guess I don't have a job anymore." So then went to jobless. Then next thing you know, I'm on the street.
You're living out on the street.
And then at that point, and then I was out living on the street. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yep. And so just committing crime to support my basic human needs. And it just started getting way out of hand. It was
what kind of crime are you looking at?
Just petty stuff around the neighborhood, or I was, stealing from stores, stealing cars, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff.
Anything violent? Anything where people got assaulted?
No.
Okay.
No violence. Everything was just money driven to support my addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Then ended up, I guess, being on some sort of list for LAPD's Pacific Division. And so found that out one day. They came knocking. This was actually before. So my father was living in an apartment in the neighborhood. I would stay there, and came knocking on the door talking about a noise complaint. And so I'm on probation. So I'm just saying, "Oh, yeah, you can leave." They'd want to leave a card. I said, "Okay, leave the card on the door." And he said, "No, we have to give it to you." I said, "Oh, I just was in the shower." You just slide it on the door. "Oh, well, we got to go." And I said, "Oh, yeah, well, I got stuff to do too." And I knew I had to comply. So eventually I had opened the door. I was in the shower. I had some boxers, some white polo boxers on. That was it. So I cracked the door for them to hand me the card. And they said, "Oh, you got some clothes on?" I said, "Yeah." So at that point, I kind of opened it to about a foot. And at that point, the one officer by the door was like, "Good, because we got a warrant," and threw his shoulder into the door. And so I threw my shoulder into the door, started closing on him because I'm high on meth, but the bottom's bowing out, and I looked down, his boots on the inside of the threshold, and I was like, okay. So at that point, I just let go of the door, turned, booked it through the house, and there was a patio there, and so I just decided to Superman off the patio, which was like a 6-8 foot drop into a to a planter.
Oof.
Next thing you know, I'm up on my feet and I'm running down the street just in my boxers in broad daylight. People everywhere looking at me, and just madness. Ended up getting away, and there was another foot pursuit a couple of days later by.
Now you're on the radar.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they were already had pictures of me in the car, me and a buddy of mine that were going around doing dumb stuff in the neighborhood. So so a couple days later, they had found me over by like La Cienega and Venice Boulevard. It's major streets over there. Took them on a foot pursuit there. Got away from them with that. The helicopter was involved. Just absolute madness. Finally, they'd catch up to me. They caught me one time. I went to go visit my father. I'd fallen asleep there and woke up, and they had the place surrounded. So they got me that time. But it was just in and out, do some time, get out, fall right back into my addiction. This was pretty consistent through my 30s. One time, the judge finally maxed me out. I had a joint suspension, and he was like, if I see you again, I'm going to give you your max term. So sure enough, I was back there less than a month later. And so I'm in LA County Jail. This was 2014. It was a Sunday, and I'm at a Medium South facility out at Pitches Detention Center at Wayside. And they tell me to go to the booth. I was like, well, there's no movement on a Sunday. What's going on? So I go out to the booth and like, yeah, you need to contact home. Okay. So I call my father, and then that's when he tells me my brother Angelo is dead. And so that was...
From what?
So with our construction company, one of the supervisors of ours, he had gotten into it with him. Work was slow, so he'd asked him to take some time off. He owed the guy petty amount of money. I've heard anywhere from $500. I've heard all the way to $2,000.
Still not enough.
Absolutely not. No amount is enough for both families to lose what ended up happening. So, it turned out he knew where we had lived, and the guy just pulled up one day and just got out and started unloading, started firing on him, and died that day.
Holy cow.
So that was tough. I didn't get out until about a year and a half after that.
So you're inside and you miss your brother's funeral.
Yep.
I'm seeing some things here. I'm seeing there's been some warning shots being shot over your bow consistently throughout your life up until this point. All right. You're in the DUI crash. The floorboard comes up, cracks your leg. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That has to do with doing something you're not supposed to do. You fall head deep into this addiction with meth, and somebody who gives you a job sees a problem, says, hey, listen, all you got to do is go get some help and you got a job. If you don't do that, you don't have a job.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you choose the latter of the two. You're inside, you're in and out, you're homeless at one point. You're stealing, you're doing the cops come break down your door, you're on these foot pursuits and you get away. And now your brother dies.
Mm-hmm.
And you're inside and you can't even pay your last respects.
Yeah, so we went through, because there's possibilities that people can get approved to go to these things. So initially the judge reviewed my stuff. Initially it was a no. We pursued it and it turned into a yes. Then it was getting okayed. It got all the way to where we pay for the transportation costs and everything. And then it turned out, since my brother, we had moved the body from LA to San Diego, there was going to be a wake in LA, but there wasn't going to be a body present. The body was in San Diego. And then since it turned out that there was no physical body present, I could not go.
Oh, man.
And so, yeah, it was a pretty emotional roller coaster of no, yes, no, yes.
Meanwhile, you're detoxing constantly. You're up and down. Because when you go inside, well, unless you can get it inside, I know you can.
Always stayed clean when I was inside.
So, but what was detox off of meth like?
I just would sleep. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
I did pretty okay. That's where I got a lot of my discipline from, was doing time, being in there. A lot of the places, since the first charge that I had was what it was, it made me a high security level. So when I would get locked up, I'd go to like LA County Supermax at Wayside, and I'd be housed in like the 800s, and there a lot of people are fighting all day. They're fighting life, and so it's a lot of serious people in there. And so I just would be very aware of, I was raised with manners, so everything's all about, respect, manners, that all goes, that's everything in there at certain levels.
Mm-hmm.
So I really learned to run a really good program in there, be just respectful, disciplined, up early, doing workouts, et cetera. So that's always how I had done my time. I'd actually had found myself in a lot of positions of responsibility in there when I was doing time.
So was that the final moment where you said, "What am I doing here? I gotta make a change. Like I really got to make a change, and I got to have the discipline to see it through." Or did you continue to
No,
go?
unfortunately not. I thought that would have been the time. I did get out, and that's at that point I was off probation, and so I was able to leave LA County, and so it was set up for me to go to San Diego. I would come on board and help out with the restaurants that my mother and her husband had opened up in San Diego. They'd opened a restaurant still there in Coronado. So the plan was for me to go there, help them with the restaurants. Got out, came to San Diego, started working at the restaurants, and within a few weeks, there were the manager that was there. There was a few people that kind of didn't want me there for whatever reason it was, and so they had conspired a couple of things, and that was all that my mother's husband needed to kind of be like, oh yeah, no, you're not, this isn't, I don't think I was ever really had that support at that point in time. So it was just a good reason to be like, okay, you're done. So then I was in San Diego, had an apartment, had a car, but then had no job. And so I resorted to old habits, got high, and then just started selling some meth. And I took another couple times. I got in trouble a couple more times. Was in San Diego, and the last time I got in trouble was October 5th, 2018. I was in a stolen car. I was going into San Diego, downtown San Diego, and next thing you know, there's a swarm of cop cars, and they're all headed my direction. So I take them on a high-speed pursuit through downtown on Friday at 5 p.m.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Thank God nobody was hit or anything. Being able to get onto the freeway, somebody comes into me and I get pops my tire. I get off, and so I go and I'm hopping fences, and I ended up under a crawl space under a house. They end up finding me, thank God. I'm thankful for that day today. That's my sobriety date, October 5th, 2018, just went by. But at that point in time, so then I end up I'm locked back up, San Diego jail, and it's my brother's birthday is the 5th of November. Remember the 5th of November. And so his birthday was coming up, and the holidays were coming up again. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I'd gone to church service there at the jail, and there was a guy there who was really on fire. I mean, he was like, his name was Paul, believe it or not. And I think he was part of a church in San Diego, and it was moving. I actually broke down. I literally broke down. I hadn't broke down since my brother had passed, and before that, I don't think I'd ever really broken down since maybe my parents or something like that. So that was pretty major. And
Did you surrender at this point?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I surrendered, and I was like, that's what I was saying. I was thinking at that point in time, I'm like, how many of these holiday seasons? I've said it a few times now. It was like I started counting. It was like 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5. I could have kept counting, but I just didn't want to. I was like, I don't want to count. I don't want to know how many. And so that was it. I surrendered. I was like, I just started talking to God every morning. I'd be up super early in my cell, and I'd be sitting there just talking to God, because I believe that's what it's all about, is just having a relationship with God.
God was always listening.
Oh yeah.
Okay, God was always listening.
Oh yeah.
You were just talking to, you weren't listening back.
No, my ears were open. Like Jesus said, those who have ears, let them hear. And so I was listening at that point in time. And
ears to hear, and eyes to see, and a heart to love.
Absolutely.
That's what it is. That's what it is. And once they're opened, it's like you start asking yourself, how how did this happen? You know, you at this point, how old are you when you're in jail?
36. At
You're
this point, 36.
You're 36 years old, so it took you 36 years old to finally figure out how your ears work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it takes one of the worst events that most people would see as being horrible. I got arrested. That's your event, right? That's a horrible event, but it's what finally shook you out of that stream that you couldn't somehow get yourself out of. Something had to pull you out. Yeah. And thankfully it was something.
It was. And at that point, was looking, you know, because I have criminal history. And so with the charges I had, was definitely looking at a prison term. And so I was just really talking with God all the time. And I had surrendered, and I was going to court. I was on a court bus, and I was talking to God. I'm like, God, just, you know, give me a program, and let's do it. I'll run it. I know how to do a program. I'd been given programs before, wasn't successful. I was like, God, give me a program. I'm all in. Let's go. I was like, give me some sort of sign, God. And so at that point, we passed a church. I was like, okay.
All right.
Okay.
Message received.
I was like, well, you know what, God, I need another sign. You know? So since my brother passed, I've always seen him in crows. There's a thing with him and crows, another buddy that passed before him. And so sure enough, we passed another church. And the second church we passed with the cross on top, there's a crow on it. I said, okay, God, roger that. Let's run it.
I got you.
So went to court. Judge, there was not a deal on the table for a program. He was like, hey, you know what? I feel like I want to offer this guy a program. Okay, that's it. Took the program, crushing it, fast tracking to be a house manager at this residential drug program, volunteering for everything. I'd seen how people had done it before, how they were successful, checking all the boxes. Bam, 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 bam. Less than 30 days away from graduating, and they tell me I have a visitor. It's the middle of the week. I don't have visitors in the middle of the week. I look up, and I see a bunch of black vehicles, not good. And then a guy comes walking down with a badge around his neck. I'm like, okay, well, I haven't done anything. I've been a good boy. Turns out he's a U.S. Marshal, and says they have a federal warrant for me. So turns out something I had done in my madness a few years prior, they came up with an indictment for me for, which turned out to be a petty distribution charge, just over the mandatory minimum. But however, it is what it was. I take full responsibility for it, and it was a tough pill to swallow. But I know that we play for two teams. There's two teams to play for, and I had started playing for the good guys, and so the enemy wasn't happy about that and tried to throw something my way to get me to veer off and backtrack. Not having it. Mm-hmm. So I took accountability for it. They gave me 77 months for it. It was just over 2 ounces, 77 months.
Wow.
And just did that, and really, I knew what it was like to run a program, how to be disciplined, how to manage my time correctly.
So now you're doing 77 months in a federal pen.
Correct.
Okay.
So it was a long transition to get there. I was housed in Orange County Jail for a while. I ran one of the facilities there. One of the guys today who's on my team was actually in that facility. I had kind of gave him like an NA Living Clean book because I saw the kid had potential, but he found me recently and was like, hey, I'm sober now. Now he's part owner of a tattoo shop. His dad's sober. He's crushing life. He's on my team now, and which is a great story of how, we're affecting other people. But so anyway, so I get into the feds and I start doing this time, and I just was going to make the most of the time. No time wasted. From the moment I roll off my rack at, I don't know, anywhere from 3 to 4 a.m., I'm up, I'm reading my Bible, I'm reading some other, some wisdom, kind of the history book. I'm doing my workouts all before the door opens at 6:30, and then my time's all blocked. Got a degree through correspondence, college degree. I took numerous classes, educated myself on numerous topics, did a lot for restaurant management because the plan was for me to come back and help out with restaurants when I got out.
Well, the funny thing is everybody says, I'd love to do X, but I don't have the time. Right? You'll hear that over and over again. It's one of the greatest excuses that's ever been said. Where you're sitting in prison, you have the time, and it's your choice. Where now, actually, you have a choice of what to do with your time. Very few people have that freeing experience. I don't suggest you do it in prison, but very few people have that freeing experience to actually have the time to do those things they want to do. But you're doing it without the freedom,
Right.
behind closed doors. But I imagine that made your time a little bit easier.
I was free as a bird in there.
Yeah.
Free as a bird in there. I did something recently that was pretty controversial. I put a reel out and I said, well, maybe everybody or some people might need to go to prison.
I don't disagree with you. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't disagree with you. I am the worst person in the world with enclosed spaces. When I went to rehab the day after Thanksgiving, 2013. That's my sobriety date.
Nice.
The minute I walked in that door, and they strip search me, and I bend over and spread them and do all that stuff, as about as sober as I was ever going to be. And I'll never forget the feeling. I'm like, I am not, like, that was it for me. I'm not doing this anymore. Not today. I'm not doing this anymore. So I don't disagree with you. It took me one time, took you multiple times, but hey, listen, the learning curve is there.
I'm special.
Yeah, the learning, you're just an overachiever. That's all it is.
Right.
But I don't disagree with you. Just if
Right.
everybody feels it.
And there's other venues. I threw that out there because that's my experience, what I've been through. I've had a lot of negative comments come back, like, oh, well, not prison. It's like, but like military, for example, is a better alternative.
Yeah.
I don't support anybody committing crime, so it's like it'd be nice. Some people I think need the experience of that kind of environment. It'd be good if they didn't have to commit a crime to go there or something like that, but. Just a real structured, environment where, people are away from where they lose. I mean, we have access to so much out here. We have it so easy out here. People really don't understand how easy it is out here. Once I lost my freedom of choice on everything, did it really.
That's what happened. That was my rehab experience. I all of a sudden lost the ability to tuck my kids in bed at night. To say goodnight to my wife.
Right.
I lost that ability. Now, it was self-imposed, so it's a little bit different. But it was enough for me to say, this is where my life is heading if I don't get this shit under control. And it was enough for me to get everything under control, and I was okay with that. You've had so many ups and downs, though, that what makes you think that this new way is the way? You're still in prison. While you're still in prison, there's got to be is there any doubt in your mind, or is this is it?
No, this was it. When by the time the feds had hit me, I had almost a year clean. And so things, it builds. The first year is the hardest. First 30 days is the toughest. And so once I had gotten to about right before the feds had hit me, I was getting a lot of support, I was repairing a lot of relationships with family and loved ones. And so once I got to a certain point where I have so much of this good, it's hard to take that risk and just give it all up to get high or whatever it may be. So at that point, I had enough of a balance to, I'm not going back. I'd seen what I was capable of, and I got a taste of it, and I just was like, you know what? It was God, man. It really was. I had my relationship with him was solid. We had communicated, and it was just like, I gave him my word, and that was it, man. Like, I don't care. Like, I'm not, till the good Lord calls me home, man. I'm on a mission.
Now your release date is coming while you're in prison. And it seems like your pattern has been go to jail, get clean, come out, relapse.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a fear?
Absolutely not.
And what kept you strong knowing that when you got out? Like, what did you do to make sure that relapse didn't happen?